So, good evening. Thanks for joining us, or if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for catching up with this video. Tonight, we're joined by Cy Biggs, author of Breakfast at Babs's. He's going to be talking to us shortly about the book, the inspiration behind it, and we'll be able to kind of flush out some of the details of the book. Before I hand over to Cy to introduce himself, a little bit about Barnthorne Publishing. We're a fairly new publisher, nearly 2 years old now. We specialise mainly in military history, some of which is fiction, most of which non-fiction, and in Cy's case, a blur between the two, perhaps. So we'll get into that shortly. But we're open to new authors and existing ones. So yeah, if you've got any ideas for a book you want to run past us, please reach out. We're on all the socials, and email is submissions@barnformpublishing.co.uk. So, Sai, over to you. Would you like to give us your introduction, both kind of personally and professionally?
Yeah, so I was Royal Marine Commandos, born in Weymouth, grew up in Weymouth, joined the cadets, and then joined the Marines when I was 17 and a half. Spent 18 years in the Corps, so not a full service, but 18 years. And then since then, I've been working out in sort of the Middle East, mostly South America, and some work in London, doing all those things that you do when you leave, sort of the risk stuff, the training stuff, and all the rest of it. Anything I can do. So not quite a mercenary, but but all those sort of jobs. So yeah, no. And then I live now in Abu Dhabi.
Nice. So I guess firstly, what took you to join the cadets in the first instance, and then the Marines after that?
Yeah, it's a good question actually. My father was in, so my grandfather had been in the Navy and done very well, gone from a boy seaman all the way up to a destroyer. And my other granddad was also in the Navy during the war, both during the war. My father then joined the Marines, and it was my life then, really. Since I was sort of, I remember writing something at 10 years old at school where they said, what are you going to do when you're 20? It's like, I'm going to be in the Marines. And the teacher was like, oh, yeah, I'm sure. And that's what I was going to do. So that, yeah, 100%, that's all I could think about. That's all I wanted to do. And I guess that mindset then ensured that even though I was a little bit shorter and a little bit weaker than most of the other guys, I managed to do it. So, yeah, no, I had a really good career. Really enjoyed it. It's just what I thought it was going to be. And then just left a little bit earlier because I'd kind of run out of things I wanted to do. I'd done a lot of exciting stuff. In hindsight, I probably would have stayed and done more if I knew what was going to happen and how exciting things were going to get. But I left and I started working and applying the trade around the world. So yeah, don't regret it, but do sometimes wonder why I didn't stay a bit longer.
Yeah. So I guess when would it have been that you left, and I guess what are those events you're referring
Yeah,
to
well, I actually
after?
joined on the 6th of June, D-Day in 1988, just after that great storm that wasn't supposed to happen in the southwest. And then I left in 2006, a year after the incident that the book's kind of based around, the operation the book's based around. So yeah, I did kind of 18 years. I left as a colour sergeant, and I left really the pinnacle of my career, which was we were going to talk about 539 Assault Squadron, which is an amphibious squadron, and I was the senior coxswain, which was kind of the highest you could really be professionally within that unit. At an operational level, as a senior NCO. So yeah, it was where I wanted to be. It's what I enjoyed doing, and then I just moved on. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it sounds like a great career, and as you say, you went out on a high, so to speak. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's always better that way. So obviously, Breakfast at Babs has been published before. So this is effectively the second edition.
Mm.
We've obviously, done a few bits to it. So I guess kind of what brought us to where we are today in republishing the book, and what the kind of journey towards that.
It will kind of when I first wrote it, I kind of wrote it for myself, and it went on. I wrote it in Iraq actually, just after doing the job that it's based on, and I was sat in a tent and I had a computer and I just started writing. And I started having these ideas about the guys I was with, the characters, the things we'd done, and I just started writing. And I wrote about 20,000 words in the first, a few days in a tent before going back out and doing convoy duties and stuff. I just cracked it on, and at night I was sat there at night, come back off duty, and I would just be busy writing. Anyway, it paused for about 2 or 3 years, and I was on a train every. I used to do work for a kidnap and ransom company for about a year, and every Monday and Friday I was on the train for 3 hours. So again, I got the computer out and I started writing again, and I pretty much finished it. But when I published it originally, I wasn't really I was wondering what to do with it, and I thought there's a lot of mistakes. I wasn't quite sure how it would read, or if I've even got the character arcs or anything right. So one day I went back to it, and I spent about a week on it, just going until I was happy. I thought it was okay. But right, I need people to read this now, because it's either going to sit forever on my computer or I'm going to publish it. So I did. I self-published it through a self-publishing company, and then I put it on Amazon myself, and that's how I did it. And I left it like that for, well, 10 years, I guess. It's been like that, making about 50 pence every 3 or 4 months. Yeah, and then I saw, actually I was on Twitter, and I saw you guys had been to the We Have Waves Fest, I think it was, and you picked up a couple of the authors. I thought, wouldn't it be good if someone could have a look at this and tell me actually whether it's any good or not, and if it is any good, then publish it. And that's what I did. I came to you, gave it to you, you had a look at it, and now that's where we are now. Really publishing it with someone probably that can market it and get it out there, because it really it's written in a way for a civilian to read it. And one of the frustrations, I guess, and one of the reasons I started writing it, and some of the words in it, is because there's a couple of people I know in the audience here. Sometimes, even if it's not operations, even if it's exercise, you're sat in a field somewhere, or you're sat on the water, or you're doing something, and you see someone go by in a car with their family or off to the pub, and you think, God, they don't even know I'm here. What does it matter? They don't even know I'm here. I'm doing this. I might have been out all night. I might be cold and wet. We might have achieved something, but they don't know. No one knows. And so you get that feeling and you get it on operations as well when you come back. And I had it as a good friend of mine listening now. In Ireland, we came back from Ireland, sat in a pub, someone starts throwing rubble out the window, and everyone's ducking under the. But we were only home for 4 or 5 days, but no one cared. No one knew what we'd been doing or where we were. It didn't matter. So I kind of wanted to write some of that into a book to get those feelings of what it's like. And that's how it kind of started. It's kind of how it started. So that's why I was keen to get it published and hopefully people to read it again.
Yeah, and I guess that's an interesting point that that kind of the civvy world meets the military, and I'd count myself in this. Obviously, having never served, I've read countless books from Andy McNabb, Chris Ryan, that kind of sort of thing growing up, and you've almost got this desire to learn about this world that would otherwise be alien to you.
Yeah,
You might have seen certain things, you might have seen things on the telly or documentaries and things like that. So I think, as you say, the book is really accessible in the language used. You are obviously being true to the environment and using kind of phrases, etc. But obviously the way it's written, you can kind of, if you don't exactly know what it means, you can kind of get the gist of it. And
yeah, that's what I
obviously,
kind of wanted to do. Yeah, and also when you read military books, often they're exaggerated. And I think what happens is a military author thinks this is, what they're doing is really hard, and it feels really hard at the time. Maybe you're carrying a huge amount of kit, whatever. So you kind of overemphasize what you're doing because you think you've got to impress. But actually, if you just tell things as they are, that's impressive enough. You don't need to overart. What you need to do is explain perhaps a little bit more around it, so someone contextually can get that feeling. That's what I was trying to do, because it's exciting enough anyway.
well, exactly, and it's classic, isn't it? You watch a film or something, and they take the original story and
Yeah,
embellish it as they will, and Hollywood and all this, but you think,
yeah,
well,
exactly.
actually,
There's nothing worse to sit with my father or me, or probably someone like Al Murray with his father, sat there watching a war film, because it's like that, yeah, very much like that. It's like, you don't do that, you wouldn't do that, but I've been on a film set, and you've got to, make it entertainment
yeah,
rather than just documentary. So yeah.
definitely. And just going back a sec, so something you were mentioned earlier. So So you said this is you're sat in a tent or so to speak, and you started hammering this out. You banged through 10,000 words, but before you'd done that, had you ever what was your kind of writing experience as such? You know,
No, nothing. Only at school. I used to really enjoy, writing stories at school. That's what I wasn't very good at reading books, but I enjoyed telling a story, and I quite enjoyed telling a story and then going, oh, I haven't, and going back and sort of,
mm,
talking about something or a character. I've just done it writing a script at the moment. I've just done it with a character where by the time I get to the end, I'm now rewriting his story because I love it. I love him so much. I'm going back to the start to rewrite his story, and so I enjoy that storytelling
mm.
definitely.
And I guess obviously in your case, the writer's block didn't hit because you were literally pouring out this information, and I guess obviously mainly, and this was one of the questions that we were discussing beforehand, that you've obviously got to be sensitive in certain ways, so we don't have the MOD and co knocking on the door. So kind of how have you dealt with that from the original kind of story to what we've published?
Yeah, no, actually, it wasn't too difficult because I mean, there's a bit, for example, at the very start where the lads launch from a submarine. So, but there's no need to explain how that is done because just saying, they're getting the boats out and they're going to launch from a submarine is exciting enough. And in your own mind, you can imagine what that might be. So, there's no need to go any deeper, and if you go back to like Saul David's book, he explains in there how they did that in the Second World War. Well, you can mention a light or you can mention a rope or whatever, and that's enough for someone in their own mind to decide how that looks. So you don't need to go through any tactical details or anything like that. So that's it. And basically, the story itself is based on fact only because we deployed to do a specific operation. We just went in to do a specific mission, and that mission completely changed. And I wrote the book around the basis of why I changed the mission because the mission would have gone wrong. And I based the mission then on what would have happened if it had gone the way that it was originally planned and we thought we conceived it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the premises about it. So I didn't need to go. And also, for example, the intelligence piece. So there's an intelligence piece in it that builds up the intelligence behind the original reason they go in. Well, as the commander, I was only given the intelligence on a piece of paper and some idea behind it. I didn't ever know where that came from. So I'm not giving anything away. I actually in this I use the CIA and I use MI6 as the initial intelligence because that builds up a picture, which is fictional, but is enough then to where did that intelligence come from? So I'm making that narrative up. So I'm not giving anything away, and you don't need to
Yeah.
really to tell the story.
Yeah, so I guess firstly then, so let's introduce the title to us, explain Breakfast at Babs is for those who won't know.
Right. So 539 Assault Squadron, which is the unit I was in that this is based on, which is now a raiding squadron. We're an amphibious deployable unit that was designed specific to support 3rd Commando Brigade, which is the 3 commando units and the headquarters. So in the old days, the amphibious units would be supported by a ship, and you rely on the Navy then to supply your amphibious assets. The brigade is deployable as a brigade, so they wanted their own amphibious assets. So we've got raiding craft, which is small inflatable boats. We had the rigid boats, which do 30, 40 knots. We had hovercraft. We had everything we needed to basically deploy by sea, by civilian ship, by air, whatever. So I was part of the raiding squadron or raiding troop, and then we were asked to put together a deployment to go to Iraq. The base we were at in Plymouth is now been turned over to civilians. It's Turnchapel. It's a very nice little base, specifically built for us. And in Turnchapel, it's probably still there, was a cafe. And the cafe was run by 2 ladies, Babs and Carol. And everyone knew them, and they knew everyone. You could go away for 2 years, come back, and they knew what you were going to have for breakfast. So they used to do our breakfast. You could go in and get a sandwich to take out, or you'd sit there and eat your lunch. So Babs and Carol, they were lovely, and they used to look after us. They knew everything. They knew everyone. If the CO wanted to know what was going on, with the lads, he'd go and have a coffee with them, and they would say, "Yeah, this is what we've heard. This is what's going on." They were the litmus test of the unit. They were fantastic. So anyway, when we got asked to do this job, it was just before Christmas. I think it was September in 2005, and I knew it was going to be a bit cheeky from the original briefing I had. So I got the lads together and I said, look, I've got something to ask you. Let's go to Babs and Carol's and we'll sit there and have breakfast. So we sat around and had breakfast at Babs and Carol's, and I said, I need 12 volunteers to do this job. This is roughly what it is. I'll brief everyone later. This is roughly what it is. And I said, and if you go and we all come back, we'll have breakfast here and we'll talk about it. And we'll all have breakfast together. And I'll buy breakfast. And so that's why it was breakfast at Babs. It's like Ice Cold and Alex, you know.
Yeah.
But while we were there, it was one of the things we would have talked about, you know. So, you know, when we get back, we're going to have breakfast at Babs. And we did actually, but we did it in the new year when we after Christmas. But yeah, so that was the kind of the idea behind it. And Babs and Carol are still around. They're stalwarts of the old reunions and things. So yeah, that's where it comes from.
Oh, that's brilliant, and it is, as you say, the reader can just imagine that the way you've described it in the book, can understand the significance of the two ladies and in the cafe, and how morale-wise it would have been playing a part on your mind. And right, well, get home, Babs is, go out to the pub, whatever it might have been. So yeah, no, that's great. So I guess if we focus on the kind of the semi-fictionalized version of the story,
Yeah.
so what's the threat posed in the book?
Yeah. So basically, what happens is in real life when we deployed, we were deploying to stop a person of interest because we thought Alamara at the time, which was this there's an insurrection in Alamara, which was kind of the key town in the Maison province, which is the Marsh Arabs, which is about 30-40 miles of borderland of marsh before you get to the Iranian border. And the army were getting pounded there. And they thought what was happening is they were basically tracking some boats going across the marshes. And what they thought is that these boats must have weapons, people, equipment, ammunition on coming in and then helping the insurrection. Anyway, so our job was going to be to go in, drop in at night, and basically stop them, but capture the lead guy. That's what the job was going to be. I took, for various reasons, I decided not to do it the way we were planning to do it. I wanted to do it a different way, which meant we weren't going to do it quite so Gucci and covertly and everything else, because I was worried it would go wrong. Anyway, when we did drop in and did the job, we found that the waterways were too small for what we assumed was going on. And actually, the only thing they could have been moving is people, and in very small boats. And so the story, instead of it being about this individual, is about suicide bombers. So in my mind, I thought, who could it have been that actually was moving? And I thought, well, actually, it's probably just an individual. In real life, it was probably just one person coming in, stirring things up, giving briefings, whatever, going back to Iran. And that's what they were doing, someone of importance. But to make it the novel, the CIA are tracking individuals. I call them the teachers in the book. They're in the mountains in Zagreb area of Iran, and what they're doing is they're training up children to become suicide bombers. And you follow the story of these guys being trained up and how they're trained to wear the vests, how they learn to live with them, eat with them, and all those sort of things. And they build up the story. And then the CIA tried to take them out. There's a big fight, and these suicide bombers escape. And that in the book is where we then come in to then try and stop them. But we don't know they're suicide bombers at the moment, and we certainly don't know they're children. So the guys then drop in into the lakes at night, the way we were originally going to do it from helicopters with the boats. And then they basically get into trouble. So the story is that they're outgunned, they're surprised by the children, they don't know what to do, and they end up in a firefight. They don't win. And the lead guy goes over the side, and then the rest of the story is him being lost from the rest of the team having to withdraw out the way and rethink, and his then escape through Iraq, or part of Iraq, to then get back to the team, and then eventually breakfast at Babs. So that's kind of the story.
Yeah. Definitely, and obviously we won't give all the kind of nooks and crannies of it away because we want actually people to bother reading it. But there are obviously so as well as this, so you've got the your unit as such, and then you've got supporting units or arms that are assisting. So what's the other moving pieces on the board?
Yeah, well, they're based on truth actually, because we were supported by the army while we were there, because they're the ones that are in this sort of situation, and we were sent in to help them out, and so we're very reliant originally on them for a base and for logistics and things like that. And so yeah, so I include them. I include the guys that we actually work with, which was the Black Watch, and I include them in the book, and that's real. Um, so yeah. So it's kind of trying to tell that story of what was really going on, because they were fighting they were fighting out there. They were doing some good stuff, in quite a sticky situation, and they supported us as well. So yeah, so that's all genuine sort of build up. Being on the base is true. Sort of the drinking and the card games and the trouble you get into, with a little bit of training, is all true. And then there's a story. There's a bit of a story about the logistics guys that helped us out, which were drivers. We camouflaged the boats. We used their vehicles, camouflaged the boats on their vehicles. So we got them and trained them up with us, because we said, look, if we get into trouble, they're going to be with us. So we trained them up, and they really got excited. These logistics guys who normally just drive these big vehicles were training with Marines. They really had a good time, and we did some good training with them, knowing that they could then support us if we needed them. So yeah, so all those bits are kind of based on what we were really doing there, because we had a good couple of weeks before we mounted it in real life.
Yeah, and there's a fairly comical moment beforehand where the you're dealing with the RAF and the rigors of their paperwork. So what about that aspect of it?
Well, that's all very true actually, and it's almost word for word what happened. So yeah, it's everyone will tell you the bane of life moving around anywhere in the world is the RAF. Yeah, they should stick to Spitfires and Lancasters really. But yeah, no, absolute bane problem. So yeah, so the story is that we wanted to deploy, and imagine now we're going on a job that's actually been sanctioned very high up, and they didn't want to take our kit, they didn't want to take our boats, they didn't want to take our fuel bags, which were brand new, so we had nothing, no petrol and nothing. Packed everything into boxes, and then when we got there, we got told they were the wrong boxes, and they didn't have the right markings on. So I got into a bit of an argument. It was all done on the phone originally. My team had gone in to sort it out. I had to drive up and go and talk to them. And I said, look, they're packed in the wrong boxes. Just put them in the aircraft. And they wouldn't. I said, no, you have to put them in other boxes. There are no other boxes. So I ended up getting some cardboard boxes from somewhere else. I threw them on the floor, and I gave the RAF the pens. And I said, there, you can draw the markings, whatever markings you want, you can draw on the side. I don't mind. Whatever you want, there's the pens. I've got like 6 pens of different colours. Whatever you want, write them on the side. Anyway, they got very funny about it. So I said, I want to speak to someone higher. Someone higher came down and said, right, here's the problem. And he looked at the bit of paper. He said, you've got this down as an operation. Yeah, because we're going on operation. He said, change it to a training flight and you'll be able to fly with everything. So they changed it to a training flight. So we flew out on a training flight so we could fly with our operational equipment. Coming back was exactly the opposite, because coming back, everything was dirty, fuel, a lot. And because we were flying on a C-17, which is under American rules, although flown by the RAF, we just threw everything in the back and flew back without any problem at all. So it's just, it's like bureaucracy. It's crazy. Yeah. Lancasters and Spitfires, they were good at them. No one's going to buy my book now, are they, from the RAF? Never mind.
Fair enough. So obviously in the team there are some other personalities,
Yeah.
which I'm assuming are kind of veiled versions of the real ones.
Yeah.
How about some of those?
Yeah. Well, what I did is I mixed up the characters a bit. So the corporal in it is based on the corporal from that patrol. He knows who he is. But I did mix up the characters, and I mixed up the jokes a little bit. So people are kind of amalgamation of those. And also the other thing is that I couldn't really tell everyone's story enough. I couldn't give everyone a character arc. So what I did, I concentrated on about 4 guys, but then mixed in the others. So they are they are based on the real people and the things that happened. We did get rocketed. We were listening to Pink Floyd. Chinese rockets came in, and we all dived on the floor in our kit and got under the bunks. And it was only like at the end we started laughing at each other and going, "We're under camp beds. We're hiding under camp beds. What we to be?" So but that's in there because it's true. It's like you don't those things. You almost don't believe happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I based the characters mostly on people, and not everyone on that mission. There's a mix of my friends, my best friend, and other people in Mike, the lead guy, and he's going to be in the next book as well. So I kind of took the best of a little bit of myself, but the best of people I know that I respect, and I built it up around them. It's easier to do then.
Yeah, and I think what's quite clear in the book is that relationship, that that bond that those characters have, and
Yeah,
obviously as much as they're sledging each other, ultimately when the story takes the turn that it does,
yeah,
leaving the
yeah,
man behind is, well, although in practicality it was the option,
mm,
long term it wasn't the option. They wanted to find him in one way or
yeah.
another.
I mean, the classic character in there actually is the Navy guy, because we had our own naval engineers, and the naval engineers never expected to actually come on frontline operations. You should really take one of the Marines, and we had this young naval engineer who never really expected to be anywhere like that, and he thought he'd just be back fixing the boats, and I needed him out. I said, "No, you've got to come with us." So we teased him. I lined everyone up, and I gave everyone grenades, and I went along and I gave everyone phosphorus grenade, HE grenade, phosphorus grenade, HE grenade. Got to him, and there was no way he ever was going to put anything like this in his kit. And I went, phosphorus grenade, HE grenade, and he took them off me, and he said, "Can I give these back to you now?" I said, "Yeah." I turned them back off, and everyone else was going, "Thank God for that." He didn't really want them, but it was nervous. But we watched him, and in the book, I've kind of been a little bit of a hero at one point, because those guys do come out of their shells. They do enjoy being in that environment with you, and they do start to learn and respect you. So they trust you, and because they've not done the 9 months of training we've done and all the stuff we do together. So
Mm.
you can't expect them to jump into that, and they don't really want to be there in that guise anyway. So I kind of made him a little bit of a hero in it at one point, because I wanted to say that sort of thank you back as well to these guys who do come out and do it with us. So yeah,
Yeah.
but he's a ginger haired guy, quite weak and wimpy, but that's exactly what he was like. But he was a very nice guy, and we took him with us.
Yeah. And so I guess with this unit, I mean, in real life, your unit, how far removed are they from the likes of the SBS?
Yeah, no, I mean that's different. So, then we're not special forces. We're commando units, Royal Marines Commando. So, and 539 supports the commando brigade. Do some similar tasks like the beach reconnaissance. They now do a lot more sort of reconnaissance work. We were doing it then, but not like they do now.
Mm.
But that's more of a show that SBS are now doing more sort of strategic stuff rather than their tier one special forces. And so we had to fill the gap that we required. So we've always done those skills, and not those skills, sorry, the beach reconnaissance skills. But no, the Royal Marines are the Royal Marines. We're commando unit, amphibious, raiding, and that sort of thing. So it's a different game.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And so obviously, after you've done your basic training or other members of the unit, to be in this specific part of the Royal Marines, is there like then more like specialized training?
Yeah, it's
Like,
just a career choice. So rather than go, you could go mortars, you could go driver, you could go chef, you could be a platoon's weapon instructor or PTI. We were amphibious. We were landing craftsmen. So some guys would spend a lot of time on the larger landing craft. I didn't. I was always small boats and hovercraft, and they are specifically just a specialization. Because you imagine we trust a young Marine after 12 weeks of training to be able to take 8 guys at night, down the coast and drop them off on a beach somewhere or under a cliff, and then go and pick them up again later. It's quite a lot of responsibility. So the courses are pretty intense. But yeah, they are specifically boat operators courses with amphibious skills. And then you learn as you go then, and then you go up through the ranks and you do another course. There's 3 courses altogether. But the structure in the Royal Marines is like that. Each specialisation builds up like that, or it did in my day. I'm sure it's still roughly the same. Builds up then until you go 3, 2, and 1 first class, and you learn skills as you go at different ranks. So yeah, no, it's just another job within the Marines to support the rest of the corps.
Yeah, I can remember the series, obviously quite dated now, but of the ML, the Mountain Leader
Yeah,
course.
behind the lines. Yeah,
Yeah, and that's, I mean, brilliant. And you just think, blimey, these guys are, the
yeah.
best at what they're doing. And I can imagine a similar thing for this, albeit in your specialization as such.
Yeah, that's all it is. Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, the MLs are slightly crazier, and it's a very difficult course. But yeah, you are specialised in what you do. You're the expert in that field.
Yeah, 100%. So to kind of head towards wrapping up then. So obviously you alluded to the character being used in the next book. So have you got any kind of plans to keep writing?
Yeah, so I've kind of got a log line for a book. I've got a log line for a screenplay. So the next book, I hope is Mike again, retired. I imagine that I started to line it up quite a long time ago. I just haven't got around to writing it yet because I've been busy with the screenplay. But yeah, I imagine a US unit that gets trapped in Afghanistan, and he's going to go in as a civilian and pull them out. The thing is, and he needs some support, some help, and the guy that ends up being pulled in by this intelligence service to help him is a former adversary who's killed someone he knows from a terrorist organization. So they have to work together to extract this US unit. So that's kind of the story at the moment. I've got it pretty much tagged out. I probably need to start it next year, I think. That'll be called Task Force Panther.
Nice. Oh, that sounds
Yeah.
really good. I look forward to reading that in due course. And you mentioned obviously your other work at the moment. So you're writing for a screenplay.
Yeah, so it's basically imagine Band of Brothers, but all I've taken is I've taken a unit, my old unit actually, 4-5 Commando. I've taken Able Troop. There's a famous picture taken of one of the troops. It's the only picture taken of anyone from 4-5 the day before. In fact, it's the day before they embark. So they do embark that day, but they don't sail. It's the 5th of June. And there's this famous picture, and it's in the IWM. And the names are there. Someone's written all the names out, most of the names, but you don't know the story behind them. So I started to research the story. In fact, it started because I was asked by the Telegraph or Times to write something about snipers, and I started looking into a sniper pair in Holland who'd been Normandy had been very successful, and they came from 4-5 Commando. Anyway, found out one of the guys is actually in this picture, and that's what started it. So I thought, why not tell the story of a unit, a troop like Band of Brothers, but a British Band of Brothers, all the way from training, in fact, from civilian life. Two of them work in the Blitz during the Blitz of Liverpool. They see the explosion of the ammunition ship, and then they end up joining the Marines. And all these characters come together, and they're all real characters except 2 of them. And then we follow them through the Second World War. So they went through Normandy. They were stuck in Normandy for 80 days. Lots of things happened to them. And then they come back and they go through Holland and Germany, and they end up in Germany. So it's kind of their story all the way through until the very final scene. They're on the beach, 6th of June, 1988, the year I joined up. And they're having a memorial service on the beach. It's the same year their CO, Dolly Gray, died, and they're having a final sort of get-together and gathering. And so we tell the story right from the start, civilians, all the way through to this reunion at the end and what happened to them. And 90% of it is true story, but what I can find. I mean, for example, there's a guy called Jimmy Chu in it. So I went on Twitter. I said, look, someone help me. This guy, Jimmy Chu, can't find anything else banned. Turns out he had 5 brothers in the service. Another Marine who dies just after Normandy, and 2 artillery guys and a kid at home. So this mother in Newcastle had 5 sons, same as Private Ryan. So we had a British Private Ryan, and he was serving in the Marines 4-5 Commando, Able Troop. So I was able to tell his story. I found out a bit about his brothers, found out a bit about him, and so I was able to tell his story. So yeah, it's great. It's great. I'm really enjoying it. I mean, it's quite big. It's like 500 pages or something. Uh, so I'm trying to get interest at the moment. I'm trying to get options or someone to take it on. But I think it'll be immense.
Oh, it sounds really good, and I think obviously, Band of Brothers is timeless,
Mm.
and more recently, Rogue Heroes has been very popular, and you can
Yeah,
kind of imagine a blend of the two being Commando. So yeah, well, fingers crossed you get the deal, and we can all watch that on Netflix in
on the
due
big
course.
screen. Yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
Good stuff. All right. Well, finally, then, before we close, just a little bit about where to buy the book. You can purchase it on our website, so that's barnformpublishing.co.uk, or on Amazon. The book's available in both a physical paperback, but it's also available on Kindle as an ebook. So that's proving quite popular. So, yeah. Final thing to say is thanks, Si. I think that's it's really brought the kind of the key points of the book out. And I definitely enjoyed reading it. It was a great story. Great to hear mostly, obviously, more about what you did in real life, blended with the then semi-fictionalized version. So yeah, thank you very much. And obviously, hopefully, we look forward to part two.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.